I've been working over the last couple of years, especially with a series of architectural photographs and photographs of urban sites. And I was really interested in the depiction of these locations and their histories and our encounters with them. And I was interested in trying to find a way to make a connection between these sites and the site of the gallery space itself. And so I started making, as you said, all these armatures to these photographs as a way of kind of projecting the representational photographic space into the space of the viewer, into exhibition space. As I was photographing a lot of these spaces, one thing that came up was they're often rendered in a modernist aesthetic. I'm thinking particularly about a series of works I did that are these black and white photographs mounted in steel boxes. And they depict spaces from around Vancouver that, as you mentioned, exclude or restrict certain actions. And the way that these structures have been implemented have been, either using quite sleek kind of material and form, such as a concrete ball in an alcove to prevent people from sleeping, or a kind of a softly waved plate on a window bench. And I was really interested in the way kind of a modernist vocabulary was used in public space as a means of diminishing and hiding itself. And so this question of visibility arose. And as someone who was interested in photographs, I was quite interested in this question of what it means to be visible, and especially when things try to hide themselves. And so I started making photographs of a lot of these objects, and after I had these photographs, I knew I wanted to also continue the conversation, as I mentioned, through a new logic, and that was to kind of continue this logic of this modernist form, but kind of impose my own forms on top of and in front of these pictures.
For me, it feels like it's always very specific to the material, and the material kind of leads to the project. So like the experience, or just something that I come across leads to wanting to intervene in it in some way. So for example, with the smoke work, so the work is called Smoke BC 2017 to 2018. And the title is quite explanatory about sort of the parameters of the work, which is that it's all these photos that I took from those time periods, from the region around BC, that had the presence of smoke from the wildfires that were happening during those summers. And so going and taking those images came out of just living through that time, and just noticing that I was seeing all these photos in my feeds, for example, and not really intending at the time to make a project out of it, but then finding it to be quite a quite a point that I could intervene in and look at what those photos could say about how people wanted to represent their experience of a climate catastrophe, for example. And so it was, just based on living through that experience and then reflecting on it afterwards in a way. The source material for Views, which was this project that was an exhibition that I did a few years ago, that was trying to look critically at the the advertising and marketing materials of a couple of condominium developments that were going up adjacent to the gallery space in the Mount Pleasant neighborhood of Vancouver, and looking at how those were trying to redefine the neighborhood that they were essentially gentrifying at the time. And again, it wasn't really that I even intended to make a project when I came across these materials. But they kind of had these latent qualities that I wanted to bring out once I saw them, which is that they had these sort of like qualities of centralizing the position of the viewer, both in their rhetoric, like in the words that they used in the marketing materials, and also in the visual form of some of the interactive viewing tools that you could find on the websites of these developments. And I found these commonalities between them just as I was, sort of doing my internet browsing and looking at what was going on around me in the city. And then, yeah, just identifying those things that seemed like critical points to try and intervene in.
I wonder if that's a theme, and I'm speculating, that runs through a lot of young artists working with photography nowadays. This question of addition to the photographic print. I know it's for me something that often comes up, the photograph plus something, as though a photograph might not be enough to speak to what you want it to be, or you feel as though perhaps that it might not fit into a certain kind of art practice that you're hoping to cultivate.
Yeah, I would totally agree with that. And then it comes in different ways, whether it's these kind of material additions or a sort of like overwrought conceptual armature at times.
I saw it as maybe a way to escape sort of kind of maybe a stalemate I saw in photojournalist practices. I think artists who are dealing with photography, who are also quite interested in documentary, have struggled for a long time now to figure out, okay, how do you keep tension? How does it not simply exist in the realm of representation and be an issue that has been dealt with? And for me, it was this creating this space, and maybe even providing attention to that modernist minimalist space, and inserting very specific histories and lines of questions that I wanted to make those inhibit those spaces.